Research tells us that the critic turns up at thresholds when we're in a place where we're about to do something different, sometimes something very big, sometimes something that causes us to be visible, sometimes when we're about to make a major decision, when we're going through change or just taking risk, basically at any point of expansion. So your identity. So we start with rooting, and then we go into releasing, we go into resting, and then reimagination, and finally realignment. So those are the 5 R's of my ArêteQuest leadership transformation. This model that I want to talk to you about, or this session, fits into the second R of releasing. It's really important for you to understand what you're dealing with, the source of what you're dealing with, and understand which camp it falls under for you to know how you go about releasing. There are 4 waves that I've noticed that the inner critic manifests. Number 1 is it sits within the camp of the compassion lens. And this you'll find in people like Kristin Neff's Self-Compassion book, and Barbara Taylor Brown, who's a Christian contemplative writer. They identify the inner critic as a part of ourselves from our childhood, a part of ourselves that was left undeveloped. The second wave is the overfunctioning mind. Tim Galloway's Inner Game of Work and Tara Moore's Playing Big talk about this almost 2 parts of our mind. Tim Galloway talks about self 1 and self 2. Tara Moore talks about the inner critic and the inner mentor. That the first part, self 1, is the more analytical, the more observant, the hyper-vigilant part of ourselves. The third wave is the wounded self, that the inner critic comes from parts of ourselves that have been exposed to trauma, that have been exposed to difficult aspects of our lives, that has created a rift in us, a brokenness. And so we have spent our lives telling ourselves stories based on that encounter or that experience. And then you've got the 4th wave, which is the saboteur, the accuser. Rick Carson in The Gremlin talks about the inner critic being a saboteur that comes in to disrupt our flow. You characterize it as an external thing and put it to the curb. Joyce Meyer's Battlefield of the Mind sees this voice as the voice of the enemy, the voice that comes to disrupt, kill, steal, and destroy. You don't want to be compassionate with this voice. You want to resist it. You want to rebuke it, put it out, get it out completely. Now, what's interesting is that you need to know what your voice is, because everyone's voice is different, right? I want you to experience the 4 N movements towards release and renewal. Notice, name, nurture, and narrate. The first is noticing. Noticing is not about fixing, it's about observing, about understanding what you're dealing with, understanding the root of it, understanding yourself, what triggers the voice. You're not negotiating with the voice, you're just listening. Name the critic. Critic gives you clarity and authority. There is something powerful about being able to name something. It says that you have ownership and agency. Nurturing helps you delineate yourself from the voice and grounds you into what is true, what is life-giving, what is possible for you. Then we go into narrating. There is something about our words. Our words have power. Our words give life, or they can break us. So when you have understood and nurtured yourself, you need to narrate back to the voice. Thank you very much for telling me not to do a masterclass. I appreciate it. You don't want me to make a fool of myself, but it's okay. I've got it. I've done the work. I can handle it. I was created for this. This is narrating a story about who you're becoming back to the voice. This practice is worked in my clients' lives. You don't need to silence the voice. You need to know how to lead yourself through it.